Have you ever felt like you're on a path that just isn't yours? What if one day everything you thought defined you suddenly disappeared, leaving you with nothing but a choice? Stick around because this story might be the spark you need for your own new beginning. And hey, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear from you. Now, let me ask you something. What's that one thing, that one core belief or memory that keeps you going when life gets tough? Hold that thought. Let's head to Los Angeles. Picture this. A crisp afternoon, the kind where the sunlight hits just right, painting everything in gold and making you feel like anything is possible. From the window of his home studio apartment, 27-year-old Elon Grayson is staring out, asking himself a question that he's been echoing in his mind for weeks. What exactly am I doing here? On paper, Elon had it all. A solid salary, his own small but energetic startup, a supportive partner who championed his every move, and a hometown in Denver that always felt like a warm embrace. By all accounts, he was living the dream. But inside, that vital spark, the one that makes you jump out of bed in the morning, felt like it was flickering out. The tech world was a constant roar in his ears. Silicon Valley, with its endless buzz about the next viral app, the next big thing in social media, felt like a race he was running without knowing why. Everyone was chasing trends, but Elon felt a different pull. He wasn't interested in what everyone else was doing. He was captivated by what could be. His mind was drawn to the unexplored, the fundamental, the things that truly mattered. To understand this feeling, we have to go back to his childhood in a quiet Denver suburb. His ambition wasn't forged in a boardroom, it was shaped in a classroom and a kitchen. His father, Richard, was a high school science teacher. You can probably picture him, kind eyes, worn-out plaid shirts, a passion for the cosmos. He taught Elon that the universe doesn't follow trends, it follows truth. It operates on principles, on laws that are constant and unwavering. While his dad was decoding the universe, his mother, Elaine, was creating warmth and comfort in their small family bakery. She was a woman of quiet strength and incredible discipline. She'd be up kneading dough before the sun rose, her hands covered in flour, a testament to her dedication. The scent of fresh bread would fill their home, a constant reminder of hard work and love. Despite her long hours, she was always there for the 6 a.m. bus stop, and she was always there at the end of the day, ready to listen to stories over warm cinnamon rolls. From his father, Elon learned to seek out fundamental truths. From his mother, he learned the power of patient, dedicated work and the importance of creating something real and tangible. These lessons were the bedrock of his character, the quiet whispers guiding him even as the loud world of tech tried to pull him in a different direction. So there he was, in his LA apartment feeling this deep disconnect. He'd built a startup that was technically successful. It was a social media analytics tool, clever and profitable, but it felt hollow. It optimized clicks and tracked engagement, but did it really help anyone? Did it align with the truths his father spoke of? Did it have the heart and soul of his mother's bakery? The answer was a resounding no. He felt like an actor playing a part, and the costume was getting heavier each day. His partner, Sarah, a brilliant graphic designer, saw his success and was his biggest cheerleader. She believed in the company, in the Elon Grayson the world saw. But she couldn't see the internal conflict that was tearing him apart. How could he explain that the success she admired felt like a failure to him? The pressure was mounting. His investors wanted growth. His team looked to him for direction. Sarah was talking about their future, about settling down. But all Elon could think about was the quiet wisdom of his parents. He yearned for the smell of freshly baked bread, for conversations about the stars, for a purpose that felt as real and as fundamental as the laws of physics. One evening, after another grueling day of meetings about user acquisition funnels and monetization strategies, he found himself scrolling through old family photos. He landed on one of him as a kid, maybe 10 years old, holding a lopsided loaf of bread he'd helped his mom bake. He was grinning from ear to ear, covered in flour. In another, he was looking through his dad's telescope, his eyes wide with wonder. That was it. That was the spark. It wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about creation, about discovery, about making something that mattered. The next morning, Elon woke up with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. He knew what he had to do, and it was terrifying. He called a meeting with his co-founder and investors. He walked into that sterile conference room, took a deep breath, and told them he was leaving. He was stepping away from the company he had built from the ground up. The reaction was what you'd expect: shock, confusion, even anger. They couldn't understand why he would walk away from something so promising. "You're throwing it all away," his lead investor exclaimed. But Elon stood firm. For the first time in a long time, he was listening to his own inner compass, the one calibrated by his father's truths and his mother's love. The hardest conversation was with Sarah. That night, over a dinner that felt cold and distant, he tried to explain the emptiness he felt. He talked about his parents, about wanting to build something with real meaning. Sarah listened, her expression shifting from confusion to hurt. "So, this life we have, it's not enough?" she asked, her voice quiet. He tried to explain that it wasn't about her, it was about him, but the words felt clumsy and inadequate. The dream they had built together began to fracture. Within a week, she was gone. And just like that, at 27, Elon Grayson had lost everything. His company, his partner, his path. He was alone in his LA apartment, the golden light now feeling mocking and harsh. The city that once promised dreams now felt like a lonely, sprawling landscape of his own failure. He had nothing left but a question mark hanging over his future. He had no one by his side, but in that silence, in that emptiness, something else began to grow. It was a strange mix of terror and freedom. He had no obligations, no expectations, no one to please but himself. For the first time, he was truly free to follow that pull he'd been feeling for so long. He packed a single suitcase, sold off most of his belongings, and bought a one-way ticket. Not to Denver, not back to the familiar comfort of home, but to a small forgotten town in the heart of the country, a place he'd only read about, a place known for its clear night skies and its strong, silent community. He was trading the noise of Silicon Valley for the quiet hum of the universe. He was leaving behind the world of virtual connections for a world of tangible creation. He didn't have a plan. All he had was a renewed sense of purpose, ignited by the memory of his parents' lessons. He was searching for a new truth, his own truth. He was ready to start kneading his own dough, under a sky full of stars. This wasn't an ending, it was the terrifying, exhilarating first page of a new chapter. He was starting from scratch, with nothing but the lessons of his past and the hope for a more authentic future. So what do you think? Was this a reckless decision or a brave one? What would you do if you were in his shoes? Let's talk about it in the comments. Your perspective might just help someone else who's feeling lost on their own path. Thanks so much for watching and being a part of this community. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that make you think. See you in the next one. Ever wonder where the seeds of greatness are planted? For some, it's not in a pristine laboratory or a prestigious academy, but in a dusty backyard, under a canopy of stars. This is the story of Elon, a boy who dreamed of touching the extraordinary, and how those dreams took flight, quite literally. Elon wasn't the kind of kid who easily fit in. He had an older sister, Marissa, who was the picture of perfection. 5 years his senior, she was the dutiful one, straight A student, college scholarship, the quiet and reliable daughter. Elon admired her, truly. In his eyes, she set the standard for success, a steady, shining star he could always look up to. But admiration can be a complicated thing. While he looked up to Marissa, he also found himself envying her stability, her clear, paved path. His own heart craved something different. He wanted turbulence, a sense of grand purpose, something he couldn't quite define but felt deep in his bones. He didn't want a predictable life. He wanted to wrestle with the unknown. This yearning for something more wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was a fire waiting for a spark. And that spark came on a dry summer night when Elon was just 12 years old. In the familiar territory of his own backyard, alongside his best friend Zach, he was about to conduct his first real experiment. He had spent weeks building it, his very first model rocket. It was a crude creation, born from scraped-together parts and sheer determination. The fins were a little crooked, the body wasn't perfectly smooth, but it was his. As darkness fell, they carried it to the launch pad, a small patch of dirt in the middle of the lawn. With a mix of nervous excitement and hope, Elon initiated the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. The rocket soared into the dark sky, a thin orange flame trailing behind it like a defiant comet. It climbed higher and higher, a tiny spear against the vastness of the night. Then, it reached its peak and began its descent. When it finally came down, the ground shook just a little. It wasn't a huge explosion, just a soft thud and a puff of smoke. But for Elon, that small contained explosion in the sky lit something much bigger inside his heart. In that moment, a belief was forged, a powerful, unshakable conviction that ordinary people like him, could reach out and touch the extraordinary. That backyard launch was clumsy. The rocket wobbled on its ascent, but the most important thing was that it lifted. It broke free from the ground even for a moment. And with it, so did his ambition. The world suddenly seemed full of possibilities, no longer limited by what was, but defined by what could be. The sky wasn't the limit, it was just the beginning. That single experience became the bedrock of his future endeavors. By the time he reached high school, Elon had a new sanctuary, his father's garage. It became his laboratory, his workshop, his kingdom. The air in that garage was a unique mix of scents. You could smell the sweet, comforting aroma of fresh bread wafting over from Elaine's bakery next door, a reminder of the simple, everyday world. But that was mingled with the sharp, distinct ozone hum of soldering boards and the metallic scent of electric motors whirring to life. It was a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexisted. He spent countless hours tinkering, taking things apart just to see how they worked and then putting them back together, often with his own improvements. His projects grew more complex, more ambitious. One of his most memorable creations from that time was a small, solar-powered go-kart. He poured all his knowledge and ingenuity into it, welding the frame, wiring the solar panels, and connecting the motor. It was a testament to his growing skills and his unwavering belief in a cleaner, better future. The big day for the go-kart's first test run arrived. He even convinced his ever-reliable sister Marissa to be the test driver. She cautiously settled into the seat while Elon made the final checks. He gave her the thumbs up, she pressed the pedal, and nothing. The motor didn't turn over. The go-kart sat silently, a monument to a brilliant idea that just wasn't working. Now, for many teenagers, this would have been a moment of crushing defeat. The frustration, the embarrassment in front of his older sister, it would have been enough to make them give up, to sulk and walk away. But that wasn't Elon. He didn't see failure as a final verdict. He saw it as a puzzle. Instead of getting discouraged, he immediately got to work. He didn't sulk, he fixed it. He methodically checked every wire, every connection, every component, driven by a relentless curiosity to understand why it had failed. This reaction was quintessentially Elon. That sheer willingness to keep going when things fell apart, to face a setback not with despair but with determination. That was the engine that always pushed him forward. It was a quality that would prove invaluable, especially when the challenges he faced grew from a silent go-kart in a garage to monumental obstacles on a global scale. This was the spirit that would define his entire life. See a problem, face it, and don't ever, ever give up. Thank you so much for watching and coming along on this part of the journey. If you found this story as inspiring as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. We have so many more incredible stories to share with you. See you in the next one. Have you ever met someone who just completely changes your world? For Elon, that person was Amelia. They met in college. She had this incredible red hair, a laugh that could fill a room, and eyes that looked like storm clouds right before the rain. She was studying environmental engineering, And she had this powerful belief that technology wasn't just for fun and games. It should be used to heal the world. Elon was hooked. He was completely captivated by her. Their conversations would last for hours, stretching late into the night. They'd talk about everything: climate change, colonizing Mars, the future of renewable energy. It was like they were designing a future that hadn't even been written yet. Amelia became his rock, his anchor. But she was also his biggest challenger. She was the one who constantly reminded him that having ambition was great, but ambition without a true purpose was just an empty shell. She gave his dreams a conscience. For years, everything seemed to be going perfectly. Elon started his first real tech venture, a small company that made electric bicycles. They became pretty popular with gamers and commuters around Denver, and the revenue was enough to make him feel like he was on the right track, like he was safe. But deep down, he knew something was missing. He felt this restless stirring in his bones. He wasn't content just riding the current wave of market trends. He didn't want to just follow what was popular. He wanted to be the one creating the wave. He wanted to build something that truly mattered. This feeling was a constant battle, especially in boardrooms filled with investors. He heard the word pivot more times than he could count. Make an app, they'd say. Get the users, go viral, that's where the money is. They saw his electric bikes as a stepping stone to something more predictable. They wanted him to chase quick wins. But Elon would just quietly push back. He'd mutter to himself, almost under his breath, "I'd rather build a machine that matters." He was holding on to that sense of purpose Amelia had instilled in him, even when the pressure was immense. He was trying to balance his vision with the realities of business, and it was a tightrope walk. Every meeting felt like a test of his resolve. The investors saw numbers and market shares. Elon saw a chance to make a real-world impact. He remembered his late-night talks with Amelia, her passion for using technology for good. That was the fire that kept him going, the reason he couldn't just sell out for a quick, easy success. He was playing the long game, even if no one else in the room understood it. This wasn't just about building a company. It was about building a legacy, something that would last, something that Amelia would be proud of. He held firm, convinced that his path, though harder, was the right one. He kept refining his bike designs, focusing on sustainability and performance, believing that quality and purpose would eventually win out over fleeting trends. He was betting on himself, on his vision, on the idea that people would eventually see the value in what he was trying to create. It was a lonely path at times, but he was determined to walk it. He was building his wave, one electric bike at a time, preparing for the moment the world would be ready to ride it with him. Then, one quiet November morning, everything changed. Elon was sipping his coffee, watching a thin layer of snow begin to cover the city outside his apartment window. Life felt still for a moment, almost peaceful. And that's when he got the news. His business partner, Zach, who had been his best friend since they were kids dreaming of rocket launches, had taken a job at a rival company. It was a blow, for sure, but if Elon was being honest with himself, it wasn't a total shock. He'd seen the distance growing between them for months, but that wasn't all. The real gut punch came in the form of an official-looking letter from the city. He tore it open. The words seemed to jump off the page. The lease on his studio apartment would not be renewed. The entire building was scheduled to be torn down to make way for a new block of luxury condos. He had 45 days. 45 days until he was effectively out on the street. In a single morning, he had lost his business partner and his home. The wave he was trying to build had just crashed down on top of him, and he was left standing in the wreckage wondering what on earth he was going to do next. The weight of it all was crushing. The safe, stable ground he thought he was standing on had completely vanished. Zach's departure felt like a betrayal, not just of their business, but of their shared childhood dreams. And losing his home, that was the final, brutal twist of the knife. It was more than just an apartment. It was his sanctuary, the place where he'd sketched out his plans, the place where he and Amelia had dreamed up the future. Now, it was all being erased. He felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The ambition that once burned so brightly inside him now felt like a dying ember. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if he had what it took to reignite it. All he had was a ticking clock and a future that had suddenly become a terrifying blank page. The city he knew was changing around him, pushing him out. The friend he trusted was gone. He looked out the window again, at the snow falling faster now, and felt a cold that had nothing to do with the weather. This was his rock bottom, a moment where he had to decide, let the wave pull him under or find a way somehow to learn to swim again. The path forward was completely unclear, shrouded in doubt and fear. But he knew one thing for sure. This was a turning point. This was the moment that would define everything that came after. What happens when your world falls apart? When you lose your partner, your home, and your sense of direction all at once? That's where Elon's true story begins. The journey from this point is one of resilience, reinvention, and the relentless pursuit of a dream against all odds. If you want to see how he rebuilds from the ashes and what happens next with his vision and his relationship with Amelia, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We have so much more of this story to share, and you won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. The shock was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole his breath. In an instant, the comfortable life he'd always taken for granted simply vanished. A quick mental calculation told him his meager savings might stretch to a few nights in a cheap motel. But that was it. The foundation he thought was solid had crumbled into dust. When his friend Amelia heard what happened, she didn't hesitate. "Come stay with me," she'd offered, her voice warm over the phone. "The couch in my loft is yours for as long as you need." He was grateful, truly, but a stubborn knot of pride tightened in his chest. "Thanks, Amelia, but I need to figure this out on my own." He had to prove to himself that he could stand on his own 2 feet even when the ground was shaking. That first night was a brutal teacher. He lay awake on the cold, hard floor of the now empty apartment, the familiar space suddenly alien and hostile. The building's old furnace hummed a mournful tune, a sound he'd never noticed before. A biting wind whistled through a crack in the window pane, a constant chilling reminder of his new reality. In the oppressive silence, a question that had been a whisper grew into a deafening roar. "If I lose everything right now, what will I do?" It was a question born of pure, undiluted fear. But in that dark, lonely moment, something shifted inside him. That spark, that ambitious dream he'd been casually chasing for years, no longer felt like a distant luxury. It felt like a necessity. It was all he had left. The next morning, Elon moved with a newfound sense of purpose. He packed his few remaining belongings into a couple of cardboard boxes, his laptop, a well-used toolbox, and the foam board covered in sketches and diagrams that held his wild ideas. Tucked carefully among them was a faded photograph of him at a go-kart track, grinning, with his sisters Marissa and Elaine cheering wildly in the background. A memory of a simpler, happier time. He called his friend Mark, who ran a small drone repair business out of his garage. "The offer for that corner of your workshop still good?" Elon asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's all yours, man," Mark replied without a second's hesitation. Elon accepted, a wave of relief washing over him. He bought the cheapest, strongest coffee he could find by the gallon and set up his new headquarters in the cramped, oil-stained garage. His workstation was a testament to his desperation and his vision. He propped up his foam boards, laid out motors and circuit boards, and on a battered whiteboard he scribbled his mission in bold green marker. The words seemed to glow in the dim light. An electric vehicle that isn't just for the rich. Below it, affordable access to space, and finally, renewable infrastructure for all. These weren't just ideas anymore. They were a lifeline. The first project he poured his entire being into was a prototype for a small, affordable electric car. It was a crazy, audacious plan, born from the ashes of his old life. Elon had the heart of a lion, but his pockets were empty. He started pitching to angel investors, his passion palpable in every meeting, but the response was a monotonous chorus of caution. He heard the word risk so many times it started to lose all meaning. "It's too ambitious," they'd say. The market isn't ready. You're competing with giants. It was a constant barrage of negativity, but it only hardened his resolve. He couldn't go back, so he had to go forward. He turned to the only people who might still believe in him: his friends. He convinced Amelia, with her brilliant engineering mind, to help design the battery system. She'd spend her evenings after her real job hunched over diagrams with him in the freezing garage. He even roped in his sister Marissa. A sharp business consultant, she was deeply skeptical. "Elon, are you sure you don't just want to build an app?" she'd asked, her brow furrowed with worry. "Something simpler?" But she saw the desperate fire in his eyes and reluctantly agreed to help him craft a business model, her pragmatism a necessary anchor to his soaring vision. His small team was a motley crew, fueled by cheap coffee, late-night pizza, and a shared fragile belief in the impossible. They worked tirelessly, their days and nights blurring into a single-minded pursuit of making the prototype a reality. The garage was filled with the sounds of tinkering, the smell of solder, and the low hum of electricity. Then came the night it all went wrong, the moment of truth. They rolled the prototype out into the empty parking lot behind the garage for its first real test ride. The air was crisp and cold, their breath pluming in the dim light of the single flickering street lamp. Elon eased into the driver's seat, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Amelia and Marissa stood by, their faces a mixture of hope and anxiety. He flipped a switch, the vehicle hummed to life, and he slowly pressed the accelerator. It moved. It actually moved. A collective whoop of joy echoed in the night. For a few glorious seconds, it felt like they had conquered the world. And then, it happened. A sudden, violent shudder, a high-pitched whine from the rear. Then, an abrupt, dead stop. Smoke, thick and acrid, began to curl from beneath the hood. The triumphant silence was replaced by the sickening smell of burnt insulation and shattered dreams. Elon just sat there frozen, staring at the dead machine. The sting of failure was sharp and immediate, a humiliation that burned hotter than the overheated motor. He got out and stood before his small team, the failure hanging heavy and visible in the smoky air. The weight of their trust, their time, their belief in him felt like a physical crushing force. In that cold, dark garage surrounded by the wreckage of his first attempt, he felt the familiar specter of that terrifying question return. What will I do now? Was this it? Was this the end of the line? Scene opens with a shot of a dejected young engineer, Elon, staring at a failed prototype in a garage. But just when despair threatened to swallow him whole, a flicker of hope appeared. An older engineer, Patricia Rivera, stopped by. She'd heard about the failed test, and having navigated the maze of big automotive firms herself, she understood the struggle. She looked at Elon, this kid with fire in his eyes, and asked a simple yet profound question. "What's your mission, kid?" Elon, his voice shaky at first, laid out his entire vision. Patricia listened, nodding thoughtfully. She saw the raw talent, the unwavering passion, and offered to mentor him. It was a lifeline. Together, they dove back into the schematics, re-engineering the motor's cooling system from the ground up. Days blurred into nights, fueled by coffee and a shared determination. Finally, the day of the retest arrived. The air in the garage was thick with anticipation. He turned the key. The motor hummed, then roared to life. The car ran. It actually ran. For a fleeting, glorious moment, the garage wasn't just a workshop. It was a cathedral of triumph, glowing with the pure, unadulterated light of success. That feeling, that was hope. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't done testing him. Just as they were riding that wave of victory, disaster struck. A destructive fire, sparked by faulty wiring, ripped through the rented garage in the dead of night. The prototype, the symbol of their comeback, was reduced to a melted, twisted wreck. All their specialized tools were ruined. The deadlines, once tight, were now impossible. The investors, who had been cautiously optimistic, grew cold. Their call stopped. The silence was deafening. This failure felt different. It wasn't just a technical problem. It felt personal. a direct betrayal by his own relentless ambition. Elon retreated into himself. He avoided the ringing phone, letting messages pile up, unanswered. The world outside the charred garage ceased to exist. Then, at dawn, a gentle but persistent knock echoed through the scorched doorway. It was Amelia. She didn't waste time with pointless questions like, "How are you?" She knew how he was. Instead, she looked him straight in the eye and asked the only question that mattered, "What do we do next?" He wordlessly gestured to the blackened remains of his dream. She walked over, placing a hand gently on his shoulder, her touch a small anchor in his swirling sea of despair. "We build again," she said, her voice firm, unwavering. And just like that, another spark, a tiny, fragile ember of hope in the ashes. But the battle wasn't just being fought in the garage. It was raging on the home front too. His relationship with his family was fraying at the edges, strained by the immense pressure. His sister, Marissa, confronted him, her words a mix of love and frustration. She accused him of risking everything on a pipe dream, of chasing an impossible fantasy, while ignoring the tangible reality of their lives. She pointed to the bakery down the street, where their mother, Elaine, still woke before the sun to bake cinnamon rolls. "You're chasing the stars, Elon," Marissa said, her voice heavy with worry, "while we're grounded here, paying rent, running a real business." Her words hit him like a physical blow. The guilt was a heavy cloak. He knew she was right, at least partly. So, he went to the bakery at 4:30 in the morning. The ovens were already glowing, the air warm and sweet with the smell of yeast and sugar. He found his mother, her hands dusted with flour, shaping the dough with a practiced, loving rhythm that had sustained their family for years. He told her he was sorry for being so absent, so consumed by his own world. Elaine just wiped her hands on her apron and gave him a knowing smile. "I know you want the sky, my son," she said softly, "but remember the ground you launch from matters too." That single sentence resonated deeper than any engineering problem he'd ever faced. The ground you launch from. His family, his roots. He realized that his ambition didn't have to exist in a vacuum, separate from the people he loved. In fact, they were his launch pad. They were the foundation that made reaching for the stars possible. This realization shifted something fundamental within him. It wasn't just about building a car anymore. It was about building a future that honored both the sky and the ground. With this renewed sense of purpose, Elon and Amelia got to work. They didn't have a garage, so they cleared out a corner of the bakery's storage room. They didn't have investors, so they sold Elon's old car and maxed out their credit cards. They scavenged parts from junkyards, reverse engineering components, and innovating with what little they had. Patricia, their mentor, became their remote lifeline, guiding them through complex electrical problems over video calls. The bakery, ironically, became their headquarters. The smell of baking bread mingled with the scent of soldering flux. It was a strange, beautiful symphony of two worlds colliding. Slowly, painfully, a new prototype began to take shape. This one was different. It was leaner, smarter, forged not just from metal and wires, but from failure, resilience, and a deep understanding of what truly mattered. They worked with a quiet, focused intensity, their shared goal a silent promise between them. Every small victory, a successfully coated circuit board, a perfectly welded joint, was a quiet celebration. They weren't just rebuilding a machine. They were rebuilding their dream, piece by painstaking piece, stronger and more resilient than before. The day came to show their work, not to big investors in a fancy boardroom, but to a small group of local business owners and car enthusiasts gathered right there in the bakery's parking lot. The new prototype, still unpainted and raw, gleamed under the afternoon sun. Elon took a deep breath, caught Amelia's encouraging nod, and turned the key. The electric motor whirred to life, a sound sweeter than any symphony. He drove it around the lot, a smooth, silent, powerful testament to their journey. There were no fireworks, no grand announcements. But as he looked at the faces in the small crowd, his mother, her eyes shining with pride. Marissa, a reluctant smile spreading across her face. Patricia, watching from a laptop held by Amelia. He knew this was the real victory. It was a victory born from ashes, built on hope, and launched from the ground he was so proud to call home. This story isn't just about building a car. It's a reminder that our greatest setbacks often contain the seeds of our greatest comebacks. It's about finding strength not just within ourselves but in the community that holds us up. The mentors who guide us, the partners who stand by us, and the family that grounds us. So whatever dream you're chasing, remember that failure is not the end. It's a redirection. And the ground you launch from, it's the most important part of the journey. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that we hope will inspire and motivate you on your own path. We'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a story that's about more than just building a company. It's about building a life, about rediscovering what truly matters, and about the brutal, gut-wrenching, yet beautiful journey of turning a dream into reality. This is the story of Elon. So, where did we leave off? Ah, yes. Elon, the visionary, the man with his eyes on the stars, was brought crashing back down to Earth. He had realized that his ambition, this grand plan to revolutionize transportation, wasn't a solo rocket ride to Mars. No, it was more like a tethered flight, where the very things he'd been pushing away, family, his roots, were the anchors giving him lift. It was a profound, humbling realization. The first step? Mending the bridge he had almost burned. He went to Marissa, his sister, the one who had always kept him grounded. The air was thick with unspoken words, with years of feeling like they were on different planets. But this time, Elon didn't talk about orbital mechanics or battery density. He talked about her bakery. He listened. He saw the passion in her eyes when she described her dream of adding a new espresso bar. And he didn't just listen. He offered to help, to apply his problem-solving mind to her world for a change. He invited her to the garage, his sacred space, to see the prototype once it was ready. She was hesitant at first, still guarded, still hurt. But curiosity and maybe a flicker of that old sibling bond won out. She came, and as she walked into that chaotic, oil-stained sanctuary, her eyes fell on the new chassis. It wasn't sleek or polished. It was raw, covered in a spiderweb of blue-painted welding marks, a testament to countless hours of labor and love. And in that moment, Elon saw it. A reflection in her eyes of the same spark he used to see in his own mirror, the spark of creation, of building something from nothing. It was a silent, powerful moment of connection. That night, over a simple dinner, something shifted. The tension eased, replaced by a new, fragile understanding. It wasn't a magic fix, but it was a start. They were brother and sister again, not just two people orbiting different suns. This, right here, was the fuel Elon didn't know he was missing. It wasn't rocket fuel. It was soul fuel. With his personal life finding a new, healthier equilibrium, the professional side started to gain momentum. And this is where another crucial person re-enters the picture. Patricia. She wasn't just a mentor. She was a force of nature. With her decades of experience and a Rolodex that was a who's who of the industry, she guided Elon through the treacherous waters of fundraising. They weren't looking for a billion-dollar valuation. They were looking for believers, and they found them. Through Patricia's old contacts, they secured seed funding. Not a staggering amount, not the kind of money that buys you glass-walled offices in Silicon Valley. It was a few $1,000,000. It was just enough. Just enough to be dangerous. Just enough to turn the prototype into a production line, albeit a small one. With the seed money secured, Elon started building his team. He didn't look for seasoned corporate veterans. He looked for people like him, diverse, hungry, maybe a little bit crazy, and overwhelmingly idealistic. He hired a handful of engineers, designers, and mechanics who saw this not as a job, but as a mission. Their new headquarters was anything but glamorous. They rented a former warehouse on the industrial side of town, the kind of place you see at dawn, bathed in a cold, gray light. The concrete floor was cracked and uneven. The old fluorescent bulbs flickered overhead, casting long, dancing shadows. The air was thick with the ghost smells of oil, metal, and forgotten work. It was a cathedral of grit, but the team saw it as a blank canvas. They didn't see the cracks, they saw potential. One of their first acts was to create a giant mural on a whiteboard that covered an entire wall. In bold, optimistic letters, it read, "We don't chase trends. We build the future." And you know what? They absolutely meant it. That warehouse, with its flickering lights and its concrete floors, became their launchpad. From the outside, things started to look promising. The team worked with a relentless, almost frenetic energy. Days blurred into nights, pizza boxes stacked up, whiteboards filled with equations and sketches. Slowly, painstakingly, the first batch of their electric cars started to roll off their makeshift assembly line. The public debut was a moment of pure, unadulterated pride. They had done it. They had built a car. But the world, as it often does, met their creation with a healthy dose of skepticism. The critics were harsh, even cruel. A leading auto magazine published a scathing review, calling the venture a hobbyist project and warning readers, "Don't bet your savings on this one." The words stung, cutting through the team's euphoria. Then came the social media trolls, the anonymous voices of the internet poking fun at their design, their mission. Another wannabe app billionaire trying to build a car? No thanks. Each comment was a small paper cut, but 1,000 paper cuts can make you bleed. Late one night, long after the last employee had gone home, Elon sat alone in his small partitioned-off office. The only light came from his computer screen and the flickering warehouse bulbs. He stared at a coffee mug on his desk, a gift from the early days. It said, "Next stop, Mars." The irony was crushing. Mars felt further away than ever. He wasn't building a rocket to the stars. He was fighting a street brawl just to survive on Earth. He looked at the mug, then at the negative reviews, and a cold, heavy question settled in his gut. Had he made a terrible mistake? Was everyone right? And just when he thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. A bigger blow landed, a haymaker that threatened to knock them out for good. A key investor, spooked by the bad press and the slow initial sales, got cold feet. He threatened to pull his funding. At the exact same time, a critical supplier missed a delivery, grinding the entire production line to a halt. The dominoes began to fall, fast. With production stalled, they couldn't fulfill their first wave of orders. Disappointed customers, who had been their most vocal champions, started to cancel. The press, which had been dismissive before, now smelled blood in the water. The narrative shifted from hobbyist venture to imminent failure. Reporters started calling, sniffing around for the inside scoop on the collapse. The weight of it all was suffocating. The canceled orders, the stalled production, the fleeing investor, the public ridicule. It was a perfect storm. Elon stood in the silent, cavernous warehouse, the whiteboard mural mocking him with its optimistic promise. The future they wanted to build was crumbling before his eyes. Everything he and his team had bled for was on the brink of complete and total collapse. He was back in the garage, but this time he wasn't building. He was watching his dream burn. What happens next? How do you come back from the edge of the abyss? We'll explore that in our next video. This is the moment that defines every great story and every great entrepreneur. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. We'll see you in the next one. In that dead quiet warehouse, a memory flickered in Elon's mind. A backyard rocket launch. Wobbly fins, a thin orange flame. But it rose. It actually rose. That memory, that small victory from his youth, was a whisper of hope in the overwhelming silence. He had to try. He gathered his team, the few who remained, the true believers. The air was thick with tension, heavy with the unspoken fear of failure. He stood before them. No pretense, no corporate jargon, just raw honesty. "We're underfunded," he began, his voice steady despite the tremor he felt inside. "We're behind schedule. I've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. But if we don't finish this, if we don't get these cars built, we're nothing. This whole thing, it was all for nothing. You could hear a pin drop. He looked from face to face, seeing the exhaustion, the doubt, but also a flicker of that same fire he felt, a shared resolve. And so the real work began. They didn't just stay late. They lived there. They rewrote the entire supply chain on a whiteboard, a chaotic mess of lines and notes that somehow made sense. Weekends blurred into weekdays. The pressure was a physical force, pressing down on everyone. Relationships at home became strained, frayed by missed dinners and broken promises. Every phone call felt like it carried bad news. Another delay, another supplier backing out. It was a relentless grind. But then, a shift. A small, almost imperceptible change. A finished chassis here, a completed battery pack there. Slowly, painstakingly, the first cars started to roll off the makeshift assembly line. They weren't perfect, but they were real. They were tangible proof that their sacrifice wasn't in vain. One morning, an email landed in Elon's inbox. It was from a woman named Lydia in Seattle. He opened it, bracing for another complaint. But the words on the screen were different. "My old car died," she wrote. "I took a huge leap of faith on your company. I wasn't sure what to expect. But I wanted to tell you, this car has given me back my morning commute. It's quiet, it's smooth, and honestly, I feel proud driving it." Elon read it twice, then a third time. Hope. It wasn't just a memory of a backyard rocket anymore. It was an email from a real customer. He printed it out, the ink still warm, and taped it to the wall above his workstation. It became their North Star. Whenever doubt crept in, whenever the exhaustion was too much, they would look at Lydia's email. It was a reminder of why they were doing this. They weren't just building cars. They were changing someone's day, making a small part of their life better. With the car company finally finding its footing, a new, far more audacious idea began to consume Elon's thoughts. He knew it was time. He gathered the core team again, this time not in desperation, but with a different kind of energy, a nervous excitement. "We've done something incredible here," he told them, gesturing around the bustling warehouse. "We've proven the skeptics wrong. But this was never the final destination. This was just the first step." He took a deep breath. "I want to talk about rockets." The room went silent. He told them everything. Not just about launching satellites, but about reusable launch vehicles that could land themselves. He spoke of colonizing Mars, of creating a multiplanetary species. He painted a vision of a future powered by the sun, stored in batteries where humanity's reach extended far beyond this one blue marble. The reaction was a mix of stunned silence, nervous laughter, and outright fear. Was he serious? Had the pressure finally gotten to him? Some saw it as a reckless fantasy, a betrayal of the focus that had just saved them. But Patricia, his lead engineer, the one who had been with him through the darkest days, spoke up. Her voice cut through the uncertainty. "You want to change the world," she said, looking directly at Elon. "You got to swing for it. You can't bunt and hope for a home run." Her words tipped the scales. The debate raged, but her sentiment won. It was a gamble, the biggest one yet. They made the terrifying decision to divert a portion of their hard-won resources into a new separate division. Space exploration technology. The risks multiplied overnight. The budgets, already stretched thin, were now pulled to their absolute breaking point. This new journey, this swing for the fences, could cost them everything they had just fought so hard to build. The future of two companies, and perhaps two worlds, now rested on this single, monumental bet. Later that night, Elon stood in his new apartment, a small loft built above the warehouse. He looked out the window at the Los Angeles skyline. The city lights stretched out below him, a sprawling galaxy of human ingenuity. Each light a home, a dream, a life. He thought about the wobbling rocket in his backyard, about Lydia's email, about the nervous faces of his team when he mentioned Mars. It was all connected. The future wasn't some distant, abstract concept waiting to be discovered. It wasn't somewhere else. It was right here in this warehouse, in the hum of the assembly line, in the wild dreams of his team. The future is here, he whispered to the glass, and we're building it. Thank you so much for watching. If this story inspired you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more. We'll see you in the next one. The Florida air was thick and damp, heavy with anticipation. On the launch pad, a metallic beast gleamed under the gray morning sky. This wasn't just any rocket. It was a prototype, the culmination of countless sleepless nights. Born from an old warehouse factory by a small dedicated team led by a man named Elon. The launch site itself wasn't glamorous. It was a gritty industrial landscape of orange rust stains, towering cranes, and the lingering chemical smell of fuel. The concrete was shattered in places, a testament to previous tests, to failures that were just stepping stones to this very moment. Inside a cramped trailer room, the entire company was crammed together. The scene was a far cry from a high-tech mission control. Folding chairs were scattered around coffee-stained tables. On a whiteboard, scrawled in bold red letters, was the heading, Failure Contingencies. The air was thick with a mixture of hope and nervous energy. Elon stood among them, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The countdown began, each number echoing the ticking clock of their dwindling funds and the weight of skepticism from the outside world. As the numbers dropped, his mind flashed back. He saw the scorched walls of the garage where it all began, a space filled more with dreams than with resources. He heard the voices of the skeptics, the so-called experts who said it was impossible, that he was crazy to challenge the giants of the industry. He felt the sting of investors pulling out, their faith wavering at the first sign of trouble. And then, a flicker of a different memory. A dusty go-kart in Denver, a 14-year-old boy tasting the thrill of speed, the raw power of a simple engine. That was the spark, the initial flame that had grown into this towering inferno of ambition. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Flames, brilliant and violent, erupted from the base of the rocket. A deep, guttural roar shook the very ground beneath their feet. The metallic beast stirred, hesitated for a split second, and then began to rise. It lifted off slowly at first, then with gathering speed pushing against the immense force of gravity. For a glorious, fleeting moment, everything was perfect. It was a flawless ascent, a silver arrow piercing the clouds. In the trailer, a collective breath was held. Cheers started to bubble up, fragile and hopeful. The rocket climbed, a symbol of their defiance, a testament to their relentless hard work. Then a single red light blinked on a monitor. Then another, and another. A cascade of alarms, a symphony of disaster. A voice from ground control, tight with panic, crackled over the comms. We have an anomaly. 45 seconds. That's all they got. 45 seconds of pure, unadulterated triumph before the dream began to unravel. One of the main engines had failed. The rocket, suddenly unstable, began to veer wildly off course, tumbling through the sky like a wounded bird. The shouts in the control room became more frantic. Abort! Abort! But it was too late. The forces were too great, the trajectory too erratic. Against the muted gray canvas of the sky, a brilliant orange fireball blossomed. A silent, terrifying explosion, followed moments later by a shockwave that rattled the windows of the trailer. The rocket was gone, consumed by fire, its fragments raining down into the ocean. A massive, spectacular public failure. The cheers died in their throats, replaced by a stunned, deafening silence. The world had been watching, and the world had just seen them fail. Elon slammed his fist onto the table, the impact lost in the ringing in his ears. He could taste ash in his mouth, the bitter flavor of defeat. The hopeful energy in the room evaporated, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. His team, his brilliant, dedicated team, stood frozen, their faces etched with shock and disbelief. He saw the panic flare in the eyes of their last remaining investors who were watching from a corner of the room. He could already see the headlines for tomorrow's papers. Startup self-destructs. Billionaire's rocket dream explodes. In that moment of total devastation, he felt completely and utterly helpless. The weight of every decision, every risk, every dollar spent came crashing down on him. All the momentum, all the hope, vaporized in an instant. And then, Another memory surfaced, pushing through the noise and the failure. He was 14 again, strapped into that go-kart, feeling the exhilarating rush. He remembered the exact moment the engine sputtered, coughed, and died. He remembered the sudden jarring silence as the go-kart coasted to a stop, the feeling of the earth becoming solid and unmoving beneath him. This was that moment, magnified 1,000,000 times over. This was ground zero. Again. The engine had died. The earth had stopped. Everything he had built had just turned to smoke and fire. But as he looked around the room at the faces of his team, he knew one thing. The go-kart didn't stay broken. He had gotten his hands dirty. He had figured it out. He had fixed the engine, and he had started it again. This fire, this spectacular failure, was not the end. It was just another engine that had died. And he knew, with a certainty that cut through the despair, that he would figure it out. He would rebuild, and they would fly again. Thank you so much for watching. This journey is full of highs and lows, and sharing it with you means the world to us. If you're inspired by stories of resilience and ambition, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We have so much more to share, but in that wreckage, a flicker of hope remained. Joel, the engineer who sat beside him, placed a steady hand on Elon's shoulder. His voice was calm, resolute. We learn. We build again. The media might have laughed, calling it a spectacular failure, but for the team, the mission was far from over. The next morning, Elon stood on the smoldering launch pad. The air was thick with the smell of burnt fuel, and orange foam still steamed from the twisted metal. He looked up at the vast cloud-pocked sky, a canvas of infinite possibility. Closing his eyes, he asked himself a question that had guided him through countless challenges. What is the one thing that always pushes me forward, even when everything seems to fall apart? A quiet, clear answer echoed in his mind. Purpose. That single word became their rallying cry. The team regrouped, their resolve hardened by the setback. They became forensic investigators of their own creation, analyzing every single bolt, every weld, every sensor reading from the failed launch. They tore down the walls of secrecy that so often surround such ambitious projects. Instead of hiding their failure, they embraced it. They began live streaming their tests, creating a transparent log of what went wrong and how they were fixing it. They invited the world behind the curtain, and slowly the world began to pay attention. The laughter quieted, replaced by a growing sense of respect and anticipation. While the rockets were being rebuilt, the electric car division was hitting its stride. The second-generation vehicle rolled off the assembly line, and the response was overwhelming. It sold out almost instantly. But it was more than just sales figures. Customers started sending in videos, personal stories of how the car had changed their lives. There were clips of children laughing and smiling in the back seat on their first-ever silent road trip. There were videos of elderly drivers beaming with pride as they said a final goodbye to gas stations. These weren't just customers, they were pioneers in a new movement. Elon decided to meet one of them in person. He flew to Ohio to visit a veteran named Tom. Tom, a man whose life had been defined by service and structure, welcomed Elon into his home. He led him to the garage, where the sleek electric car sat gleaming. "You know," Tom said, his voice thick with emotion, "for years I felt like my world was shrinking. But this car..." He patted the hood fondly. "You gave me back my freedom." That message, so simple and profound, hit Elon deep. It wasn't about the technology or the stock price. It was about the human impact. It was about freedom. Just as his professional world was finding a new equilibrium, his personal life began to shift. Amelia, the woman who had been his steadfast support through fire and failure, sat him down one evening. She had been offered a prestigious fellowship in renewable energy, a dream opportunity. The only catch? It was in Germany. Elon felt a pang of fear, the thought of losing her, his anchor. But looking into her excited eyes, he knew what he had to do. "You have to go," he said, his voice firm despite the ache in his chest. "You go. I'll be here when you get back." In that moment, he understood that real love wasn't about holding on tighter. Sometimes it was about having the strength to let go and support someone else's journey. Then another message pulled him back to his roots. A text from his sister, Marissa. "Dad's health is worse. Mom's worried. Can you come home this weekend?" Without hesitation, Elon boarded a flight to Denver. Stepping out of the taxi and walking towards the old family bakery, the familiar scent of yeast and cinnamon wrapped around him like a warm blanket. A comforting aroma from a childhood that felt both a lifetime ago and like yesterday. He pushed open the door. The little bell chimed. There was Richard, his father, standing behind the register. He looked older, moved a little slower, but the same quiet strength was in his posture. Marissa was by his side, her presence a steady support. They both looked up as Elon walked in. For a moment, no one spoke. The years of distance, the arguments, the unspoken words, they all seemed to melt away. The recognition in their eyes, a mix of pride, worry, and unconditional love, said everything. Elon crossed the worn linoleum floor and embraced them both. In that hug, surrounded by the scent of his childhood and the people who were his beginning, he felt the unshakable hold of his true anchor. He was home. This journey of building, failing, and rebuilding, both in the skies and within his own heart, taught Elon the most valuable lesson of all, that true strength isn't found in avoiding storms, but in having anchors strong enough to hold you through them. It's about purpose, connection, and the courage to begin again. Thank you so much for watching and sharing this journey with us. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and consider subscribing to our channel for more content that explores the human side of innovation. We'll see you in the next one. In the heart of that catastrophic failure, a tiny spark of hope refused to be extinguished. Joel, the lead engineer who had been sitting right beside him, placed a steadying hand on Elon's shoulder. His voice was firm, unwavering. "We learn from this," he said, "and we build it again." The media, of course, had a field day. The headlines were brutal, filled with mockery and declarations of failure. But for the team, for Elon, the mission was far from over. The very next morning, he stood on the launch pad, surrounded by the smoldering wreckage and the lingering smell of burnt fuel. Orange foam still steamed from the cracks in the concrete. He looked up at the vast, cloud-pocked sky, the same sky they had tried to conquer just hours before. Closing his eyes, he asked himself a question he had asked many times before in his life. What is the one thing that always pushes me forward, especially when everything seems to be falling apart? In the quiet sanctuary of his own mind, a single powerful word echoed back. Purpose. That was the turning point. They didn't just rebuild, they reinvented their entire process. The team regrouped, their initial despair replaced by a fierce, collective determination. They meticulously analyzed every single component, every bolt, every weld, every line of code, every sensor reading from the failed launch. They didn't hide their mistakes. Instead, they did something radical for the aerospace industry. They pulled back the curtain. They started live streaming their tests, sharing their failures as openly as their successes. They published detailed postmortems explaining exactly what went wrong and how they were fixing it. And slowly, the world started to pay attention. The laughter quieted down, replaced by a growing sense of respect and fascination. People weren't just watching a company build rockets, they were watching a story of incredible resilience unfold in real time. While the space division was clawing its way back from the brink, the electric car division was hitting its stride. They launched their second-generation vehicle, a car designed not just for the wealthy elite, but for everyday families. The response was overwhelming. It sold out within weeks. Soon the customer videos started pouring in. Videos of children laughing and playing in the spacious back seat on their first-ever electric road trip. Videos of elderly drivers, beaming with pride, as they explained how they would never have to visit a gas station again. One story in particular stuck with Elon. He flew to Ohio to meet a customer, a veteran named Tom. Tom had lost the use of his legs years ago and had found driving conventional cars increasingly difficult. But the unique design of Elon's vehicle, its smooth acceleration and intuitive controls, had changed everything for him. With tears in his eyes, Tom looked at Elon and said, "This car, it's not just a car. You gave me back my freedom." That single sentence hit Elon with the force of a physical blow. It was a powerful reminder that his work wasn't just about technology or profits. It was about changing lives, about giving people hope and independence. It was a tangible manifestation of his purpose. But even as his professional life found a new, more profound direction, his personal world was shifting beneath his feet. Amelia, the brilliant architect who had been his rock through every fire and every failure, delivered some life-altering news. She had been awarded a prestigious fellowship in renewable energy research, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The only catch? It was in Germany. A familiar wave of fear washed over Elon. The fear of losing her, of losing the anchor that had kept him steady through the storm. He could have asked her to stay. He could have told her he needed her. But looking into her eyes, seeing the passion and excitement shining there, he knew what he had to do. "You have to go," he said, his voice softer than he intended. "This is your dream. I'll be right here when you get back." It was a painful realization, but a necessary one. Sometimes the deepest form of love is letting go, allowing the people you care about to fly. Just as he was processing Amelia's departure, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his sister, Marissa. "Dad's health is getting worse," it read. "Mom's really worried. Can you come home this weekend?" The word sent a chill down his spine. Without a second thought, he booked a flight to Denver. Walking into the family bakery was like stepping back in time. The warm, comforting smell of yeast and cinnamon wrapped around him like a familiar blanket, a scent woven into the fabric of his childhood memories. His father, Richard, was standing behind the register. He looked older, slower, the lines on his face deeper than Elon remembered. Marissa was by his side, her presence a quiet source of strength for them both. As Elon walked towards them, the usual hustle and bustle of the bakery seemed to fade into the background. They looked at him, and for a long moment no one said a word. But the look in their eyes, a complex mixture of pride, worry, and unconditional love, said everything that needed to be said. He stepped forward and pulled them both into a tight embrace. In that moment, surrounded by the simple, profound love of his family, Elon felt his own anchor, the one he had been searching for, finally find solid ground. He was home. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content that explores the human side of innovation and perseverance. We'll see you in the next one. Have you ever felt like you're constantly chasing something? The next big trend, the latest hot stock, the it thing everyone's talking about? It's exhausting, right? It feels like you're always one step behind, trying to catch up to a train that's already left the station. We're told that to be successful, we need to be trend savvy, to pivot at a moment's notice, to jump on the next big wave before it crashes. But what if I told you that this entire approach is fundamentally flawed? What if the secret to real, lasting success isn't about chasing trends at all, but about ignoring them? Let's talk about the pivot. It's a celebrated word in the startup world. It's the story of a company on the brink of failure that suddenly changes direction and finds gold. We hear about Instagram pivoting from a check-in app to a photo-sharing giant, or YouTube pivoting from a video dating site to the platform we know today. These stories are inspiring, no doubt. They feed into this narrative that success is about being agile, about reacting to the market, about chasing what's popular. But this celebration of the pivot often misses the most important part of the story. It focuses on the what, the change in product, but it completely ignores the why. Why did they pivot? Was it just a desperate guess? A blind chase after a new trend? Or was there something deeper at play? Let's dig into that. When we only look at the surface-level change, we get the wrong lesson. We start to believe that success is a game of musical chairs, where you have to find an empty seat before the music stops. This creates a culture of trend chasing. Entrepreneurs and creators feel this immense pressure to constantly monitor what's hot. Is it AI? Is it crypto? Is it short-form video? Is it sustainable fashion? The list is endless. And so they jump from one idea to the next, building half-finished projects, abandoning them as soon as the hype dies down, and then scrambling to find the next big thing. They're not building a business, they're collecting lottery tickets hoping one of them hits the jackpot. This doesn't just happen in business. We see it in our own lives too. We see a friend getting into marathon running, so we buy expensive running shoes that end up collecting dust. We see influencers promoting a minimalist lifestyle, so we throw out half our belongings only to find ourselves buying new stuff a few months later. We're constantly reacting, trying to mold ourselves into the shape of what's currently popular, losing a little bit of our true selves in the process. We're chasing someone else's definition of a good life, not building our own. This path leads to burnout, dissatisfaction, and a profound sense of being lost. Why? Because you're not operating from your own internal compass, you're letting external noise dictate your direction. So what's the alternative? The alternative is to stop looking outward and start looking inward. It's to find your why, your core purpose. This isn't some fluffy, abstract concept. It's the most practical, powerful foundation you can build. Your purpose is your North Star. It's the reason you get out of bed in the morning. It's the unwavering belief or the deep-seated passion that drives you, regardless of what's popular or what's trending. When you have a strong purpose, your perspective on pivoting completely changes. A pivot is no longer a desperate jump to a new lily pad. Instead, it becomes a course correction. You're not changing your destination, you're just finding a better route to get there. Your purpose remains constant. It's the anchor in the storm of changing trends. The what you do, the product, the service, the project, is just a manifestation of your why. And because your why is timeless, you have the freedom to change the what as you learn and grow, without feeling like you've failed or given up. Let me tell you a story about a founder named Alex. For years, the tech world watched him in awe. He founded a company that seemed to do the impossible, building these incredibly advanced futuristic rockets and sleek, high-performance electric cars. Everyone assumed his journey was a classic tale of trend chasing. He started with rockets when the space race was heating up again, then pivoted to electric cars just as sustainability became a global buzzword. Investors praised his agility, his uncanny ability to be in the right place at the right time. Pundits wrote articles about his genius for spotting and capitalizing on emerging trends. He was the poster child for the pivot philosophy. Everyone thought they had him figured out. But they were all wrong. They saw the what, but completely missed the why. They saw the rockets and the cars, but they didn't see the thread that connected them. The story everyone told about Alex was a complete fabrication, a narrative they projected onto him because it fit their preconceived notions of success. They assumed he was chasing trends, because that's what they would have done. That's what most people do. So they built a myth around him. But a few years ago, at a small, intimate conference far from the glare of the mainstream media, a journalist asked him the one question no one had ever bothered to ask. What was your very first company? The room went quiet. Everyone expected to hear about some early failed attempt at a dot-com startup or a social media app. Alex smiled, a knowing, almost mischievous smile. He explained that his journey didn't start in a Silicon Valley garage with dreams of becoming a tech billionaire. It started in a small, cramped workshop in the back of a bike shop in Denver, Colorado. His very first venture, the one he poured his heart and soul into long before anyone knew his name, wasn't a rocket company. It wasn't an electric car company. It was a small, humble project to build high-efficiency, eco-friendly electric bicycles. You could feel the collective gasp in the room. Bicycles? His grand vision, the one that led to rockets and world-changing technology, started with bicycles? He went on to explain his core purpose, the why that had driven him from day one. His lifelong passion wasn't rockets or cars. It was sustainable transportation. It was the fundamental belief that humanity needed to find better, cleaner, more efficient ways to move, both on this planet and beyond it. That was his North Star. The eco-bikes were simply the first, most accessible way he could think of to bring that purpose to life. They were the first expression of his why, and that's when the shocking punchline landed. the one that turned the entire myth of Alex, the trend chaser, on its head. The company he founded wasn't originally about rockets or electric cars at all. It started as a small eco-bike project in Denver, the pivot that everyone assumed, the trend chase that investors feared and then celebrated, wasn't a pivot. It was the core. The rockets and the cars weren't a change in direction. They were an evolution. They were a scaling up of the exact same purpose he had from the very beginning. From a two-wheeled vehicle for a single person to a multi-ton vehicle for humanity. The true innovation wasn't the technology itself. It was the unwavering commitment to a purpose. And the truth is, when you don't chase trends, you create them. Alex wasn't trying to catch the sustainability wave. His work was part of what created the wave. He was so focused on his own mission, so dedicated to solving a problem he deeply cared about, that he ended up at the forefront of a movement he helped build. People weren't just buying his products. They were buying into his vision. They were drawn to the authenticity, the consistency of his purpose. Life is full of surprises, but love will always lead the way. And by love, I mean that deep, unshakable passion for your purpose. That's the one thing that will guide you through the uncertainty. And sometimes the greatest trend you can start is the one people don't know they need yet. They don't see it coming. They don't understand it at first. But you keep building, you keep creating, you stay true to your why. And then, one day the world catches up. They just follow when it becomes obvious. But by then you're not following anyone. You're the one leading the way. So I want to ask you, what's your eco-bike project? What's that small, humble idea rooted in a deep passion that you can start today? Stop looking at what everyone else is doing. Stop chasing their trends. Look inward. Find your purpose, your own personal mission for sustainable transportation, whatever that may be for you, and start building. Don't worry if people don't get it yet. The right people will. And eventually, the rest of the world might just follow. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this message resonated with you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more content like this. It really helps us grow and continue making these videos. Until next time, stay true to your purpose. Have you ever felt like you're constantly chasing the next big thing? You see a trend on social media, a new must-have gadget, or a secret to success that everyone's talking about, and you feel that pressure, that pull to jump on board before you're left behind. We all do. We're wired to follow the crowd. But what if I told you that the most successful, most innovative people and ideas don't follow trends? They create them. Let's dive into a story. Picture this. A young, ambitious entrepreneur. We'll call him Alex. Alex is brilliant, charismatic, and has a vision that could change the world. He starts a company, and it explodes. We're talking rockets, futuristic electric cars, mind-bending technology that looks like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. The media goes wild. Investors are throwing money at him. Everyone sees him as this genius who perfectly timed the market, who saw the future of transportation and clean energy and just pounced on it. They called him a master of the pivot, a genius at chasing the right trends. But here's the secret, the part nobody saw coming. The company he founded wasn't originally about rockets or electric cars at all. The grand vision that everyone admired, the one that made him a household name, it didn't start there. It started small. Really small. It began in a cramped garage in Denver, not with blueprints for Mars colonization, but with a simple, heartfelt project. Building eco-friendly bicycles. Just a small eco-bike project. That's it. Alex believed in sustainable transport, in making his city a little greener, one bike at a time. He loved the engineering, the design, the feeling of creating something that was both beautiful and good for the planet. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, so he pivoted. He saw that bikes weren't going to make him a billionaire, so he moved on to cars and rockets. Smart move. That's what everyone assumed. The investors who later funded him, the journalists who wrote glowing profiles, they all saw this incredible pivot. They saw a savvy entrepreneur chasing a bigger, more lucrative trend. They whispered about how he abandoned his small-time dream for the big leagues. But here's the twist, the shocking punchline that changes everything. It wasn't a pivot. It was never a pivot. It was the core. The rockets and electric cars weren't a departure from the eco-bikes. They were the ultimate evolution of them. The true innovation, the driving force behind it all, wasn't a desire to chase a trend. It was purpose. From day one, Alex's mission wasn't just let's build bikes. His mission was, let's find better, cleaner, more inspiring ways for humanity to move. The bicycles were just the first, most accessible expression of that purpose. They were the testing ground, the foundation. When he moved to electric cars, he was simply applying that same core purpose to a larger scale. And the rockets? That was the ultimate expression of human movement, of pushing boundaries, of exploring new frontiers, all born from that same initial seed of purpose that started with a simple two-wheeled machine. The pivot that everyone assumed, the trend chase that early investors feared, wasn't a pivot at all. What they saw as a risky jump from one idea to another was actually a steady, unwavering climb up a mountain they couldn't even see. Alex wasn't chasing trends. He was following his purpose to its logical, awe-inspiring conclusion. And that brings us to a profound truth, something that applies not just to business but to our own lives. When you don't chase trends, you create them. When your actions are driven by a deep, authentic purpose, a why that truly matters to you, you're not just following a path. You're cutting a new one through the jungle. At first, it might look like you're lost. People might not understand what you're doing. They might say you're unfocused or that your idea is too niche. But you keep going, guided by that internal compass. Think about the greatest artists, inventors, and thinkers in history. Did they conduct market research to see what kind of painting was popular? Did they check social media to see which scientific theories were trending? No. They pursued a deep personal obsession. They followed their curiosity, their passion, their purpose, often in complete isolation. And in doing so, they didn't just contribute to the culture, they redefined it. They laid down the tracks that everyone else would eventually follow. This is the difference between being reactive and being creative. Chasing trends is reactive. You're always looking over your shoulder, trying to guess what's next, trying to fit in. But creating from a place of purpose is proactive. You're looking forward, from the inside out. Your work becomes an authentic expression of who you are and what you believe in. And authenticity has a power that no fleeting trend can ever match. It resonates with people on a deeper level. Life is full of surprises, right? It throws curveballs we never see coming. The market crashes, a relationship ends, a plan falls apart. If your foundation is built on chasing the latest trend, you're on shaky ground. When the trend fades, and they always do, you're left with nothing. But if your foundation is purpose, if it's love for what you do, you're solid. You can weather any storm. You can adapt, evolve, and grow, not by changing who you are, but by finding new ways to express who you are. Your purpose becomes your anchor. Love will always lead the way. Whether it's love for a person, love for a craft, love for a cause, or love for a problem you're determined to solve. That love is the most powerful fuel in the universe. It's the energy that gets you out of bed in the morning and keeps you working late into the night, long after the initial excitement has faded. It's what makes the work meaningful, even when it's difficult. And here's the beautiful, almost magical part of it all. When you focus on your purpose, when you lead with love and authenticity, you start to build something unique. And sometimes the greatest trend you can start is the one people don't know they need yet. They don't see it coming. They don't recognize it as a trend at all. They just see something new, something compelling, something real. And they follow. They follow not because it's popular, but because it feels right. They follow when it becomes obvious. So the next time you feel that pressure to chase, to conform, to jump on the bandwagon, I want you to pause. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is my purpose? What do I truly love? What is the problem I was born to solve, even if it's just in my own small corner of the world? Forget about the noise. Forget about what everyone else is doing. Look inward. Find that core mission, that non-negotiable why that started you on this journey in the first place. Nurture it, protect it, Let it be your guide. Because your unique purpose is the most valuable thing you have. It's the source of true innovation. It's the blueprint for a life and a legacy that is authentically, unapologetically yours. Don't be a trend follower. Be a trendsetter. Not by trying to be, but by being so dedicated to your own path that you create a new one for others to walk on. The world doesn't need more copies. It needs more originals. It needs you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope this gave you something to think about. If you enjoyed this video and want more content that dives deep into purpose and creativity, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and create more for you. We'll see you in the next one.